Hey everyone, Brian here, and I'm back with another episode of Nerd Theater. And I'm once again joined by my girlfriend, Alyssa Pataky.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, always. And we had such a good time doing the Shadow of the Vampire episode. Really enjoyed discussing that movie with Alyssa, and thought it would be fun to come back together on another episode of Nerd Theater. And instead of talking about vampires again, we were today going to discuss the year of 2024 as a whole, at least in terms of movies. Now, Alyssa, what have we done here today for our lists here?
So we've each picked out 3 movies that we want to talk about that we saw together this year. And it could be anywhere from streaming to theater experiences, but they've come out in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also not talking about any movies that either we've done a video on before or we want to do a video on before.
Yep. So there's going to be no overlapping. For example, I did a video on Hundreds of Beavers. If you want to go check that out, please do. That's a great movie. Had a lot of fun talking about that one. And it would definitely be here on this list today had I not talked about it. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start talking about our favorite movies or most memorable movies for one reason or another of 2024. We're going to start off our list. I'm going to go first, and Alyssa's going to go second, and we're just going to go back and forth until we've eventually talked about all 6 movies. And the first movie we're going to be talking about on this list is Mad Max Furiosa.
So tell me a little bit about Furiosa.
Yeah, so Furiosa is the latest effort of director George Miller, and he once again is taking us to the Mad Max wasteland, but this time he's telling it through a prequel story through the lens of the character Furiosa. Now, when this movie was announced and some more info was coming out about it, the big hang-up a lot of people had, myself included actually, was the lack of Charlize Theron from Mad Max Fury Road. Now, she played that character marvelously, and while Anya Taylor-Joy is a phenomenal actress, it was weird to hear that Charlize Theron was not going to be coming back to reprise the role. And I think partially that reason may be is apparently these movies are absolute monsters to film. I guess the conditions are horrible. They're out in the desert in the heat shooting, countless days, and just super long days doing these crazy stunts. So I don't think it's an overall pleasant experience. So that could play into why maybe she didn't come back for this. It could also be that it is a prequel and we're seeing a younger Furiosa, and maybe Charlize Theron is a little too old to do that. I don't know what the reasons are, but whatever the case, she's not back. And her presence was missed, but I will say Anya Taylor-Joy killed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised that Charlize Theron not being it was the big issue that people were having, and not that the fact that there's no Max in it.
Yeah, well, that too.
Okay.
I know people are hung up about that. I didn't care about that much. I was like, it's a Furiosa movie. We've got, 4 movies of Max? That's fine. True. We got plenty of him. But it is, yeah, you're right. That was a big thing that people were hung up about it. He is barely to be seen in this movie at all. I think he has 1 cameo appearance and that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot working against this movie, I guess. But it fully delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we watched every Mad Max movie leading up to Furiosa.
We did, yeah, because you hadn't seen any of them.
I've seen Thunderdome. I've seen Thunderdome.
Thunderdome, and Fury Road.
And Fury Road. So I had seen those 2, but I haven't seen the first 2 Mad Max movies.
Yeah.
So we were fully immersed in the Mad Max universe by the time we went to see this movie. And I think I agree with you. It delivered on every aspect of what a Mad Max movie should be.
Yeah. The action, if you've seen Fury Road and you're a fan of that level of action, it definitely delivers on that front. I thought that the action was on par and maybe even a little better in some sequences. There was one segment that I loved that involved these kind of propellers that these characters had, and they're throwing spears down at this giant rig that Furiosa's driving, and that scene blew me away. It's like a near 10-minute action sequence, and it's incredible. But one thing that I found both surprising and refreshing about this movie was how much, I mean, it's an action movie, action adventure movie at the end of the day, but comparing it to Fury Road, the action definitely took a bit of a backseat, and I think it's for all the better in this movie. I think they'd be foolish to try and do Fury Road again, and I really appreciated that this was more of a character story, and we get a lot more time to have the quiet moments with the characters and let them kind of unravel what just happened on screen.
Like, it has a lot of heart to it. That
it
I
does.
think Fury Road does have that, but compared to like the older Mad Max movies, I mean, the first one is about him losing his wife.
Yeah.
And the second one, he's like helping the villagers and like he's like saving the villagers, and then the children in the third one. So it's just like there's an element of heart, I think, that was missing in the. I mean, there's the pregnant women, of course, that he's saving.
Yeah.
But it's different than, let's say, this one where Furiosa loses her mother and she loses her partner, and she goes through all this like heartache.
Yeah.
And I think that was what's missing from Fury Road.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think Fury Road is perfect. I think it's a perfect movie, but it was definitely trying to do something a lot different than the other ones. And like you said, he is helping someone.
Yeah.
But because it's so go, 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 the whole entire movie is basically one big set piece. There's not that time to really sit with the characters as much and like kind of hear what they're going through. And,
absolutely.
It's just kind of 100 miles a minute. And I like that Furiosa kind of had those. It felt a lot more in line with like Mad Max Road Warrior, like the second movie. Like this kind of feels like a more realized version of a movie like that. And man, performances were incredible. I loved Furiosa. I thought she was a great character to follow. They did there's some interesting thing I saw where they did some really seamless CG at the beginning, de-aging, where they had a younger actress that looked like Anya Taylor-Joy, but then they like digitally edited the child's face to resemble Anya Taylor-Joy more. And she would look more and more like her with each passing scene. So by the time we actually switch over to Anya Taylor-Joy, it's like you don't even know the difference. Like it just feels like you watched a child grow up. That blew my mind. I haven't seen de-aging done that well. I don't think ever.
Yeah, I was gonna say the last time we saw something with de-aging was Indiana Jones. And
what are you talking about? It looked perfect. You don't think that looked and sounded like Harrison Ford?
Well, it was something.
It's one of those things where like that looked pretty good until he started talking.
Absolutely,
and it just fell apart.
Stupid blue-eyed boys decided to join hands together and follow this sweaty little Pied Piper named Adolf.
I felt the same way with when they brought Princess Leia into Rogue One. I was like, oh, that looks like, and then she talks, and you're like,
oh yeah,
or Luke, a little sketchy
in The Mandalorian.
I haven't seen that.
Oh shoot, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, so I can't say. But
shoot.
But I have heard some people say that was a little iffy looking, which is also weird because they hired a guy who looked just like him.
Absolutely, so it was unnecessary.
Could have just used him.
So I think a standout performance from this movie is Chris Hemsworth getting to play a villain.
Yeah.
I think he was incredible in his role.
He was. In a series that is full of just the most despicable of villains, I think he ranks pretty high.
Absolutely.
I love that he took inspiration, Chris Hemsworth himself said he took inspiration from like carnival barkers and that kind of like loud, like, ladies and gentlemen, like that kind of
stop your engines.
Yeah, that kind of energy he's bringing in every scene, and he's foolish, which I thought was interesting. He's not a smart villain.
No.
And he reminded me of like a Commodus from Gladiator, where it feels like a child who has been given so much power which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And I feel like he reminded me of Commodus in that way. He just feels like this overly privileged, just like irrational child that has all this power and this group of people following him, which made him more hateable and more threatening as a villain.
Absolutely. And the fact that he was also like a father figure to Furiosa.
Yes.
I think that just was like another layer to the whole character that was sinister in a way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was great. I thought he was a really unique, hateable villain. And I really loved Praetorian Jack.
Yes.
He was a new introductory character. And a surprising element of this movie, I think that the argument could be made that there is possible sparks flying with Furiosa and Max in Fury Road. But I always read that as more of like a mutual respect between the characters. But this movie, in my opinion, I think it's undeniably in part a love story.
Oh yeah, absolutely it is.
And I don't really think that a Mad Max movie has pulled that off as well as this one does. I loved watching these two characters start with like a mutual respect and like a bond, and hey, we're gonna survive this wasteland together, and then that developing into a full-on romance and like a very subtle but like very touching, like affectionate way.
Absolutely.
I felt like this movie sticks out from the rest just for having that. And I really enjoyed that. I think it was really refreshing in such like a hopeless, like horrible world. Like seeing something like that take place in the Mad Max universe was really new, and I liked that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also featured in this movie is one of the most upsetting scenes that I've seen, I think, in a while, maybe the whole year. There's some pretty grisly stuff that came out this year.
Yeah.
But this scene in particular, I guess spoilers if you guys haven't seen it. But there is a scene in here where Praetorian Jack dies. He gets killed by Chris Hemsworth's character in such a humiliating and just like gutting way. And it takes place almost completely in the background because Furiosa is tied up and like can't do anything about it. And it's just, they're just dragging him in the dirt, and he's being chased by two dogs, and they're just having the dogs run in circles. And it's just like, it's brutal. It was one of the most upsetting scenes I've seen, especially coming off the heels of such like a beautiful, like touching love story. Having it severed so harshly right in the middle of the movie was so shocking, but also it makes the revenge story all the more satisfying.
It reminds me of the first Mad Max in that way.
Yeah.
Like when he loses his wife and his kid.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like time of being a flat circle in this world. It's like Furiosa's different side of the same coin as Max. So that's a great point. I love that they kind of paralleled those two characters in different but also similar ways.
Yeah.
And it was great. This is a revenge story. I don't think that's a spoiler if you've seen the trailers.
No. We're already past spoiler
territory. We're past spoiler territory. That's true. But it was a very satisfying revenge story. This is one of those movies where there's obviously, I think in real life, I think it's more times than not true that revenge is, not worth going after. It's like that classic saying, if you plan for revenge, dig two graves, because it's a pointless thing to try and enact. But this is one of those rare exceptions where it's a movie where it's like revenge is okay sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're in a post-apocalyptic Australia, I mean, what do you have to lose at that point?
Have they ever mentioned if the rest of the world is okay, or is it just Australia in this world?
I don't know.
Is every other continent just like fine? Is every other country just fine?
I think they mention in the second one that it's the whole world.
The whole world is screwed.
Yeah, I think they do that like montage of like news reports and stuff.
Yeah, you're right. Where we're seeing the fallout, and I think there's even something like that in here too.
Yeah,
we're just seeing it through the lens of Australia, though. But yeah, it was a great movie. I really, really enjoyed Furiosa.
I really liked it too.
We saw it in IMAX together. Man, what an experience that was.
We were like up front too.
Yeah.
Which we usually don't try to do.
Just like looking back, our necks are like a 2.5 hour movie.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, you remember those the video game display things at Walmart where you
Oh
play the controller
yeah,
and you'd look up
absolutely.
at the screen, and by the end you felt like your neck was
Yeah.
locked there. That's what I kind of felt like by the end of Furiosa.
Mhm. It feels like we don't have luck with IMAX movies. Like we saw Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon also right at the front.
All right, up front.
But
We love seeing 3-hour movies in IMAX,
Yeah,
like
we do.
in the most uncomfortable way possible. But yeah, I mean, despite needing a trip to the chiropractor afterwards, I think it was well worth it. It
Mhm.
was so loud. It looked so beautiful. The sound was incredible. Obviously, I can't say go see this movie in theaters because I think it made like $70 million in theaters on a
Mhm.
$168 million budget, which is the unfortunate thing.
Mhm.
This movie did not do well. I know that it's now made its money back, but like just over like 100 million or like 10 million past like what it was made for,
Mhm.
which is a shame. I think it was
Yeah.
mismarketed. I
think
don't
it
think
was.
a lot of people knew about this movie because Fury Road did incredible.
Yeah.
So if you just ride that steam, keep it in theaters long. They also took it out of theaters way too soon.
Mhm.
And I feel like it really would have helped having it just stay a little bit longer. So
Yeah.
it's sad this movie got mismanaged and will probably lead to maybe never another Mad Max movie again. I know there's plans for like the Wasteland movie,
Mhm.
which would have been awesome.
Mhm.
But if this is the movie that you have to go out on, I think it's a really great movie. I think
Mhm.
it ties into Fury Road in a really satisfying way.
I don't know. I think we need a Gyro Captain movie. That's my that's my opinion.
Yeah, I would love to see a Gyro
I want to
Captain
see what
movie.
happens to Tina Turner's saxophone player. Like that's what
Yeah.
I want to see happen.
Yeah, we could have seen that in Wasteland.
could have.
Who
We
knows
could have.
what they had planned for that thing? I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that this movie, the Wasteland movie, does get made. But
Mhm.
again, if Furiosa is the last hoorah, I think it's a fantastic movie to go out on. I think the
Mhm.
performances were incredible. I thought it was a great time. The action was sublime. And what a way to send off the series if this is it.
So our next movie is going to be Lisa Frankenstein.
Lisa Frankenstein. This was a really fun movie. Now, this is one you picked, so
It is.
go ahead, lead us into it. What's Lisa Frankenstein all about?
So Lisa Frankenstein. Lisa Frankenstein is the story of a high school outcast named Lisa. She's kind of a loser. Her dad's just remarried, and her stepsister is a popular cheerleader. But Lisa's more interested in the Cure and just being dramatic and goth. This movie takes place in the 1980s as well. So Lisa, every day after school, there's this graveyard nearby, and she goes by, and she sits under this particular grave with a bust of what's his face from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and she sits under this bust, and she wishes.
It's Dylan Sprouse, right?
I think it's Cole Sprouse.
It's Cole Sprouse. You're right. It is Cole Sprouse.
So she sits under this bust, and she pines for a man like this man who could fully love her in the proper way of her little goth heart desires. So that is the premise for Lisa Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And then one day, a lightning bolt hits the bust of Cole Sprouse, and he comes to life like Frankenstein.
Rises from the grave.
Rises from the grave. And that is the story of Lisa Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Or the premise, at least.
This was a great movie.
I really loved this movie. I loved the aesthetics of it. I loved the idea of the corpse coming to life and this girl this kind of outcasty girl who doesn't fit into this time period, she doesn't feel. Who went through some traumatic events. Her mother was also murdered by a serial killer.
And then the guy axe murdered her mom. And she heard the whole thing.
Yes.
I do believe, or if it was a random break-in, I can't remember what it was, but her mother was murdered like in front of her eyes.
Yep.
So that's like another part of Lisa and why she's obsessed with kind of the macabre and the spooky a little bit. So I just really loved. I don't know. I related to Lisa. I was a lot like Lisa in high school, so I really just kind of like related to this character.
Yeah.
You know, I was kind of nerdy and kind of into things that not everybody else was, and sort of I just really like resonated with this character. And another part of the movie is she has a crush on this other guy who's very deep. he's very deep. He quotes poetry and deep things to her. And it turns out that he's sleeping with her stepsister and seeing her, even though he's the perfect type for Lisa because they're very similar people. And so that also kind of puts Lisa over the edge. And her Romeo, her knight in shining armor, her boy who's coming back to life, comes in and rescues her.
Yep.
And I think a lot of teenage girls have that sort of fantasy of like they're misunderstood and they want somebody to come rescue them from their situation that they're in, especially in high school and things like that. Just kind of being the outcast. But this is to the extreme.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I love Diablo Cody as a writer. I think she has a very distinct writing style. I think if you see one of her movies, one of her scripts, it's really clear that it's her work. This is very in line with Jennifer's Body in the sense that it's taking a high school setting and showing the comedic horrors of that said setting, but also very real, trials and tribulations of high school, being a high school girl. Jennifer's Body is about two high school best friends who get wrapped up in a horror story. And this is a high school teenager who is an outcast and gets wrapped up into like a horror romance.
Yeah.
But very real things that they tackle. I don't think it's native to just the 80s. I think the issues that they talk about are very real, very, very contemporary and timeless. So.
I mean, Lisa gets almost raped by a boy in her class.
Yeah.
So
there's
some very real things that happen that the stories tackle. So after she finds out that this man has come back to life and he immediately finds her, she ends up becoming best friends with him. And he ends up killing her stepmother as well.
Yeah.
And so that's where she starts taking body parts from the people he kills, because he also kills the guy who tried to assault her.
Yes.
So she starts taking the body parts from these victims and sewing them onto Cole Sprouse, and she puts him in the tanning bed to reactivate.
Got
them.
a tanning bed outside of her shed.
And so she reactivates them, but throughout this as well, she's gaining more confidence. It's almost like a twisted version of somebody just like finding themselves and gaining the confidence they need for adulthood, but through this like twisted murdery romance with a dead corpse.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot like Heathers in that way.
Absolutely.
It's like a perverted, twisted take on a coming of age story.
Absolutely. I think Heathers I think it definitely drew inspiration from Heathers.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it captures the 80s aesthetic really well.
It does.
But it also manages to avoid the pitfall that I feel like, maybe this is just like a nitpick or like a pet peeve of mine, but I feel like a lot of like 80s style or like throwback retro movies, because obviously there's a lot of nostalgia surrounding the 80s now. I think we're starting to dip into the 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, but 80s is definitely big. And I feel like with the 80s, I feel like when they go wrong, it's almost like too much. They're going too deep with it, where it's like every character has to remind you that the movie's taking place in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like this movie just lives in its time period.
I agree. I think that's really noticeable in just like the styling of their house.
Yeah.
Because it is like that pastel 80s.
Yeah.
And like, you don't see that in movies very often. They always go for the most extreme, like, design styles.
Purple walls.
Yeah, exactly.
Blue carpet.
Yeah. But this is like that pinky, purpley pastel. I don't know.
Yeah.
It looks like items from the 80s.
It looks like real people
it looks like
are
real
living there.
Homes. Like photographs I've seen of like my family's like in the 80s, it looks like how their homes look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also manages to capture the feel and the structure of a classic 80s film. Like this very much plays out. like the character of Lisa and her arc and the adventure that she goes on. It feels paced very similarly to a classic 80s movie, with obviously a Diablo Cody twist on this. And I don't know if we mentioned who directed this movie.
No, we haven't. It is Zelda Williams, Robin Williams' daughter.
Which is awesome.
Isn't this her directorial debut or her
as far as
movie?
feature films? I believe this is the first thing that she's done. And
really
great work. Yeah. Did great work. The look of this movie is beautiful. It looks awesome. Again, we were just talking about how it feels authentically 80s. It looks authentically 80s too. It's got a very nice look to it. It plays around with like neon lighting, especially whenever she's in her shed playing with the tanning booth. That kind of becomes Lisa Frankenstein's like unofficial laboratory.
Absolutely.
And I feel like scenes like that really play with the colors, and it just looks great. I think the actors all look great. And Catherine Newton, maybe one of my favorite newcomers for actresses.
Absolutely. We also saw her in Abigail this year, which is another incredible movie. That one's about vampires.
Yes.
And she was excellent in that one too. I think she's one of my favorite actors.
Yeah, she's really funny. I first saw her in Freaky with Vince Vaughn, and I thought she was really likable and funny in that movie. And I feel like with each subsequent film that I've seen her in, she's just grown on me more and more. I think she's really funny. And there was a video I was watching where they were talking about how Catherine Newton, of all of Diablo Cody's actresses, like that have, brought her scripts to life, she's one of the finest. And I think that's definitely true. I feel like she takes this weird material and just makes it feel just normal. It makes it feel really natural, and it's like, oh yes, that character would say something like that or do something like that. Yeah, and she just has like an effortless presence. I really enjoy every performance of hers, but I do think this is her best work so far. She's just really funny in this, and really likable, and she plays a believable oddball that you still, at the end of the day, root for and really end up liking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love all the acting in this. I think Cole Sprouse does a really good job playing a undead man from 200 years ago.
Yes.
I think he does a good job. I really like the stepsister too. I think she's really funny. She has one of my favorite lines in the movie where she calls, say her mom's missing, and she's supposed to go to a conference or something. And she never called to say she got there. So the stepsister calls and reports her mom missing. And she says something along the lines of, "She wears white diamonds. I know, she's a bitch." And it's so funny. Especially because I wear white diamonds. It's the reason I wear.
That is a great line. I love, it's a lot of good, very clever dialogue. I mean, as to be expected with a Diablo Cody script, but she did not miss a beat here. And again, very much like Jennifer's Body, if you're a fan of that movie, this movie as well has a lot of, it balances its genres well. It's the subgenre of horror comedy, and it's even dealing with romance a lot too here. And it juggles them all well. The horror elements are really strong. It's a really funny movie, and it's honestly a pretty charming romance too, a very unconventional romance, but it deals with these elements really well, and it never feels like one is overpowering the other. They marry each other just beautifully, and it's great movie. Early movie too, one of the first movies we saw this year.
We saw it around Valentine's Day.
We did.
One of my favorites, and I love the soundtrack. The soundtrack was really good too.
It's got a great soundtrack. All around incredible movie. See Lisa Frankenstein if you haven't. I thought it was,
I loved it.
Heck of a good time. Up next on my list is I Saw the TV Glow.
So I know this one, when we saw it in theaters initially, wasn't your favorite movie.
Yeah.
But tell me what's changed about that. What changed your mind?
A lot changed for sure. Talking about this now, Obviously, my opinion is vastly different from when we first saw it, because when you and I first watched it together, it was a movie I recognized was really well made. I think it has solid visuals. I think the tone is strong. I think they more or less they achieved everything they sought out to do, but I didn't think it was a movie I'd be thinking about a ton, and I was dead wrong. I have thought about this movie on and off several times since I've seen it. It's got a very lasting impact. It's a kind of a movie that gets under your skin and stays there. I am constantly thinking about this movie. I loved it. I saw the TV Glow by Jane Schoenbrunn, they're a transgender director, and they're an indie filmmaker, and they're someone that I've followed. From their first movie, they did a movie called We're All Going to the World's Fair, which more so than any movie I've ever seen, any piece of media, captures what internet culture was like in the early 2010s in such an organic, believable way. I feel like there's a kind of lack of sincerity, or kind of like a lack of research is present whenever you see like the internet used in a lot of movies or TV. I feel like it's kind of become almost like an in joke with people, like whenever
Googles.
like fake Googles, and like just watching it, and if you've used the internet, that's not authentic. Like that's not how that actually looks in real life. We're All Going to the World's Fair nails it. They nail the impact of like YouTube and social media consumption, and like the trends that go on like on YouTube and whatnot, and the effect that has on younger generations and the youth. And I feel like it did that so effectively in that movie, and I feel like Jane Schoenbrunn again just nailed it. Going this time from internet to overconsumption of television in the 90s. And stuff like Nickelodeon shows and Cartoon Network shows. This movie, the kind of shows that they are, I guess, satirizing or paying homage to, feel more in line with something that air on Nickelodeon.
I feel like it's Power Rangers.
Power Rangers.
I think a big part of the Pink Opaque is Power Rangers.
Yeah. Power Rangers is definitely a big inspiration.
And I would say probably Nickelodeon, because I think Nickelodeon. Well, Power Rangers was on
Power
Disney.
Rangers was Nickelodeon.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I watched Power Rangers on Disney too.
I think they got bought out. I think
Yeah.
Power Rangers got bought by Disney because they played. I think they played by the time they got to like the one with the dinosaurs and stuff. I think it was on Disney XD.
Actually, I like the one where the blue Power Ranger was a dolphin.
Yes,
That's my favorite one.
I
And
would
it was
see
a girl.
Power Rangers like in passing.
Yeah, that's the only one I ever watched. Like, watched was the one with the dolphin. And because blue is my favorite color, and the blue Power Ranger was a girl, and so I was like excited about that.
That was a leap for them too, because
It
usually
was.
only the pink and yellow were ever the women. So pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Before we get too deep into TV shows, what the premise of this movie is, you'll see why we're referencing so many shows. But what this movie is all about is it's all about a young boy who is growing up, is unsure of himself, unsure of who he really is, feels uncomfortable in his own skin, and meets makes a new friend, and their big bond is that they both really, really like this show called The Pink Opaque, which is a fictional show that pulls a lot from Power Rangers, pulls a lot from shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark, and man, do they nail the look of those shows. Like this movie, like I said, again, with We're All Going to the World's Fair, that movie felt authentic. This movie, again, feels very, very authentic with what it's trying to capture from just the 90s. We were just talking about Lisa Frankenstein and how that movie feels like the 80s, just a slice of life. Like you're just seeing these people live in the 80s. It just happens to take place in that decade. The same is true here. Just the way they dress, the fashion, the style, the decor and housing, and like some of the things that were around at the time, like the Snapple vending machines, like stuff like that. and the look of the TV show is like the pink opaque that they watch.
Yeah.
It just like, yeah, that looks just like it.
I
That grain and the
honestly-
noise on the television, and like the
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know, the bled out color correction on it, and just like it just looks like something that is airing on an old like RCA TV.
Absolutely. I honestly wanted more time in the pink opaque.
Yeah,
Like I wanted to spend more time in this movie.
yeah, it's so good. The pink opaque part of it is so
Mhm.
interesting that you could almost make a whole movie about that.
Yeah.
Which just goes to show it makes sense why these characters are so enthralled by this show.
Mhm.
It feels like something that, oh yeah, I would tune into 24-minute episodes of this
Yeah, absolutely.
back in the day.
I think the one place this stumbles for me
Hmm.
is the music scene where they're at the bar and then you see Phoebe Bridgers play and then you see another band play. I think that was a little bit too much.
Yeah,
I think they should just had it be just Phoebe Bridgers do her thing or with her group she was with
yeah.
and just do that instead of like the whole like it was a very long sequence I think could have been trimmed.
Which I know this movie pulls a lot of inspiration from a show that I love. It's the third season, the limited series of Twin Peaks. And that was one of the big things they pulled inspiration from. Was almost every episode of that season ends with a artist or a band performing at the Roadhouse, and they wanted to kind of capture that too with this, and I think they did. I just think it lasted just a little bit too long. That was
Yeah.
the one stretch of the film that I feel like, yeah, you could have trimmed that up a little bit. But as far as everything else, it works really well. We start off with our main character, Owen, and he is growing up. And like I said, he feels like a fish out of water. He feels unsure of himself and, not comfortable in his own skin. And he's kind of feeling confined to what is expected of him as both a young man and also a member of society. He doesn't really know where he lands, and there's kind of the gender norms of what should be expected of a man and what you should like that he doesn't really click with. Like there's a lot of conflict with him and his dad. Like his dad wants him to be a certain type of man, and like you can't watch the pink opaque because it's a show for girls. He has to ask for permission from his dad for a lot of things, and you can feel that like tension there, and that's really what sets off this movie. And when he discovers Maddie, when he meets her and he discovers the pink opaque, and they kind of go down that rabbit hole of this fictionalized world, he really starts to find himself and kind of open up and become at least who he thinks he's supposed to be. And that's kind of the whole question of this movie. Will he realize what he is supposed to be? Which of course leads into the not even so much an allegory. Like it just feels like it is a transgender story.
Absolutely.
And I felt like it was very powerful in that regard. It kind of feels like today's Matrix, as far as like the impact it had on the I don't know if like the silent part of the audience is the correct term, but it tapped into the smaller part of the audience who's going to be seeing this movie. Like there are people still today that don't know that the Matrix is largely a trans allegory.
Yeah.
This movie is a lot more for the trans audience, but I feel like it has that same like impact on that group of people that the Matrix did, in that it's made so many people realize who they really are. It's made so many people feel these certain things, and like how scary it is to be a transgender person these days, or also in the 90s especially, probably so. And so I feel like they really managed to touch that group of people with a really compelling story.
Absolutely. And it's even a TikTok trend.
Yeah.
Like the main song from the trailers. And it's like people talking about their experiences seeing the TV glow.
Yeah. So it's undeniably reached people, which is really, really cool to see. And even like for me, I think that's one of the big reasons, like at first it didn't really click with me, but then when I really let it sit with me and I really thought about like the themes of the movie and the journey that Owen goes on, and how he by the end I guess light spoilers if you haven't seen it yet, but by the end of the movie, he does end up falling into the norms of, his, being a man, and he's got a family that you can tell he's just going through the motions of what adulthood is as a man, or what is expected of him.
And he's dying.
And he's slowly dying inside, and he's like decaying. Like, I mean, I think he's supposed to be like 40 by the time the movie ends, and he looks like awful. Like he aged like a president,
Yeah.
He looks like Abraham Lincoln by the end of his terms. And like, he looks rough, and he is just like decaying, and because he never fully let himself make that transition, and so the ending is it's pretty devastating. He's stuck, trapped, living a life that he doesn't want because he never took that step to transition. And so I think what made me appreciate the movie more and made me pick it as one of my top 3 for this video was it made me understand transgender people in a way that I hadn't before. It was a thing where I knew of their existence. Obviously, I've met transgender people. I went to high school, met transgender people there. I think that's probably the first interaction I ever had in real life. So I was aware of them. But I feel like this movie, when I realized what it was all about, when it clicked with me after we were driving home and we were talking about it, it made me appreciate it even more. It made me see their way of life and what their experience must be. It made me understand it to a degree that I hadn't before. So it literally changed the way that I view the world, which is that's not, there's not many movies that can do that, but this one managed to do so, and I felt like it did it in a very, very powerful, moving way. I can see why this brought a lot of people to tears by the end, because it feels like a movie that audience is probably waiting for,
Absolutely.
So I really, really enjoyed it. I thought the performances were great. I think the visuals are incredible. I think it's one of the best looking movies of the year. And yeah, I just really, really liked what it said, what its message was, and they also just nailed it as far as the look goes. I had a really, really good, I don't know if good time is the best way to describe this movie, but it really did genuinely move me in a way that I wasn't expecting.